The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, where we are thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers mentoring other moms to greatness. It's a great place to be. Please go check them out online at powermoms.com. It's great community. So without further ado, we are in, I said this would be the last episode last time, but I was wrong. This is the second to last episode of our mini season about words and different words we use in our own lives to help us, stay on the track to finding more joy and having a more full of joy life. And so today we are talking about the word imagine. Before we dive into what that means to us and what it could mean to you, let me say hello to Tova and welcome her to the show. How are you doing today, Tova?
So once again, I know I keep saying this because it just astounds me. Like I feel like a time traveler, and I know people are like, Tova, we get it. You're recording in July. We're listening into September. It's not that exciting, but it feels exciting to me that we're recording in July and you're listening in September because we're two totally different people. Like the Tova in September is dealing with school and soccer and all this stuff. And the Tova in July hasn't even like gone on vacation yet. Like we're different ages. Like it's just so different. It's back to the future. It's breaking my brain. It has me excited and I can't get past that. So when you ask how I am, I'm always like, wait, are you asking July Tova or September Tova? Because September Tova is like dealing with back to school, and July Tova is not. And I don't know how to answer.
Well, so since I don't believe you're psychic,
Yes.
I am assuming you do not know how you're doing yet in a time that hasn't happened in our brains yet. So many layers of nonlinear time happening in that thought process. But anyway, I am assuming we're talking about right now, today in July, sweating and living our best summer lives.
I will say today is gorgeous outside. It
Yeah.
is. I am sweating right now only because I haven't taken a shower yet and I've already worked out, but it is so lovely. The humidity has finally broken. You just made a comment about non-linear time.
Yeah.
And it is once again a reference that you didn't know you were making to Ted Lasso, which I feel like once again enforces that you need to watch it. There's a scene where the two announcers are chatting, and the one announcer asks the other announcer a question, and he's like, do you believe? And he's like, well, blah, blah, if you believe it, that time is linear. And the other one's like, I do. And so he answers the question that way. But yeah, so July Tova, I'm excited that it is not ungodly hot right at this exact moment, and I'm just going to enjoy it. Like I'm going to be like, this 86-degree high without insane humidity is amazing.
It's refreshing.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
I am bringing us around to the word of the day that we're weak or whatever. I am imagining a future wherein I am not hot or having a headache or having a sore knee. That's what I'm doing. Um anyway, let's talk about imagine. Let's do it. Let's dive in. Obviously, I have a very unpleasant headache today, and therefore I am a little like not as fun to talk to, but I will do my best. Uh,
Yeah.
it is I did the research for this. I actually did do research for this because I had like I had a preconceived notion of what I wanted to talk about, but then I was like, I want to expand that. So according to the interwebs, and they get things wrong, but I'm just going to say that Albert Einstein did say this, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to what we know now and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and everything there ever will be to know and understand. And I think that encapsulates why I wanted to do some research, because when I think about imagine, I think about like creativity and I think about like artists and writers and things like that. But really, like, you can't be an innovator of any kind without being able to imagine a world that is different from the world that currently is. Right. And
Yeah.
so, like, I think it is way more like it's easy to talk about artists, right? When you're talking about like imagine. It's easy to talk about authors and things like that. It's less common in at least in the circles I run in, and as discussed, I'm very much a humanities person, to think about imagination in science and mathematics and like um even like social studies, things like that. It's less common to think about it, but really it applies in every aspect of life.
So have you seen Oppenheimer yet?
No, I haven't watched it yet. Sean watched it.
S-
I have not.
So, I mean, not to be like celebrating imagination when we're talking about the destruction of humanity, but a lot of imagination went into like with math and science went into
Yeah,
like Oppenheimer and the nuclear bomb and a lot of the books that I read around I know this is not the turn that we planned on taking, but like a lot of books that I read about war, or like I just listened to a book with Malcolm Gladwell about learning kind of the development of snipers and how to be more precise and in a good aspect of snipers, like it does allow for way less civilian casualties in
yeah,
time of war, like a significant reduction of civilian casualties. But it required a lot of experimenting and imagination. And well, if we know this, and if we think outside of this box, if we try this, if we do this, maybe we can figure out how to make this work. And a lot of math and science had to go into figuring out how to do precision bombing or sniping and stuff like that. And so I know that I'm only referencing wartime, but unfortunately, the fact is that a lot of our innovation comes from wartime innovation that then spreads to the rest of our lives.
absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I mean, some of the it is a lot of imagination goes into driving our math and science.
Absolutely. In any innovation, right? Like
Yeah,
anywhere where you're creating something new, you had to be able to imagine a world wherein that new thing existed. Even when I would argue, even when you stumble into something, right? Like thinking about
yeah.
penicillin, like it was an accident-ish, but also like you had to be able to imagine what that was, right? Like you had to be able to be like, oh, there's this mold and like it's doing something. Imagine if it did this, right? That's the only way you can get to that conclusion.
So I have never thought about imagination this way or imagining this way, but I feel like imagining I've never thought about it until this conversation, until about 5 minutes before we started having this conversation, because I've been thinking about, I knowing that we were going to talk about this today, I'm like, how do I feel about this word? Like, am I going to have any like existential crisis when it comes to this word as I've had with other ones that we've talked
Right.
about? um to me it's like a positive anxiety. Like it's like a what if, but like an exciting what if, like let's think outside the whole, like, because you're talking about thinking about a whole world that we can't even imagine,
Right.
and picturing a whole world that
That
but
we
like
can
where
imagine.
that we can't imagine. I know I'm trying to use a different word. But like whereas with anxiety it's sort of the same thing, but like not in a good way.
Right. It's in a like fear-based way as
Right.
opposed to
And you
a
know,
abundance kind of
in
phase.
an right, it's where, yes, 100%. Whereas anxiety, and I did just I saw it Inside Out not too long ago, or Inside Out 2, not too long ago. And where with anxiety, fear is the driver, right, to protect you.
Yeah.
So I have to think of all of the possible situations, and I'm only going to focus on the negative ones for fear. Um, but with imagination, and I know we're going to get to this, joy is often the driver.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, I mean, you're blowing my mind because you wrote the outline. And so you're the reason that I'm thinking of it this way. But like my mind is being exploded right now as I'm thinking about these is like this same concept, but different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that if you do struggle with anxiety, this is an opportunity, I think, to not, I don't want to say embrace your anxiety, like, yay, I have anxiety and it's so fun. But also like much like I spend a lot of time in the world of neurodivergence and how to talk about it and like how to interact with the concepts, right? Like that's a weird thing to say, but like interacting with the concepts in a way that is affirming and positive as opposed to negative and critical, right? And
Yeah.
I think that finding a way to look at your struggles as superpowers, as cheesy as it sounds, and as like sometimes people will be like, oh, well, you're just silver lining it because sometimes it really just sucks. Yeah, of course. Of course it does. But like also, and you can look at it
Yeah.
as a superpower, right? And so if you can take anxiety to this place where you're like, all right, so I'm imagining all the worst case scenarios and all the possible outcomes, and it's overwhelming and all these things, but also like, and also I'm looking at like, oh, well, but what if we try this and this could be interesting? And, like you can have a more expansive worldview.
I would have to think that a lot of people that wrote comic books were very anxious people, right? And they were filled with imagination though. And they were like, oh my God, what if something did this? And then
Yeah.
they did this, and then they did this. But they also had a side in them that was like, but what if a hero came in
Yeah.
and it was a nerd, but then they were just like us. But then they had this superpower that a
Right.
spider bit them, and like, and it saved us. And it makes me wonder. We had, I don't know if it was last season or the season before, but we talked about the what if scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the research for that one, and I was fully prepared to go in and think this is going to be a bad thing, like constantly catastrophizing and thinking about what if the worst case scenario situations. And what we learned was if you are able to prevent yourself from spiraling,
Right.
sometimes thinking about which is a big, caveat, but if you are able to keep yourself from spiraling, thinking of the worst case scenarios is not necessarily a bad thing. It can make you feel empowered. It can help you actually be prepared for said worst case scenarios.
Right.
Like, and so it is a way to turn potentially an anxiety into a superpower,
Right.
into I am always prepared, because I think of these worst case scenarios, and it allows me to feel stable and prepared and ready to take on what I need to take on.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I think it's not ignoring the fact that you're also anxiety ridden, but it is acknowledging that it can also allow you to be prepared.
Definitely. Should we like I don't know that I need to define the word imagine, but I will anyway. So Merriam-Webster tells us the definition of imagine is to form a mental image of something not present, suppose, guess, to form a notion of without sufficient basis to fancy, plan and scheme. So I think that encompasses more or less everything we're talking about. I don't really, I don't know about if you imagine you form a notion of without sufficient basis. I feel like that, as always, it takes it in this weird negative direction that isn't necessarily necessary. That's duplicative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, so one thing I did read that I found interesting is the difference between fantasy, imagination, and daydreaming, right? Because I was thinking about this in the context and read a lot about this in the context of education and kids, because kids often get in trouble for daydreaming. Um, And yet we want kids to use their imaginations, right? So it was an interesting thing to read about. What the, experts, whatever, say is that it is your imagination that allows you to move toward manifesting what excites you, which I liked that explanation. Like you can imagine a future wherein you have, you've written that book, or you've solved that math problem, or you've, gotten married, or you've had the kid that you wanted to have, or the, well, that you cannot really control, but you've had a kid. Um, and I think the distinction between imagining and daydreaming has to do with whether you are imagining from a sense of creativity or from a sense of sort of like ego. That's what the experts say anyway. Um, Daydreaming, they say, is more from like your internal wounds, so to speak. It gets a little wooey here, but like from your wounded self, and it's an addictive way to avoid your feelings. I don't know that I agree with that as much, only because we call, I think, imagining daydreaming. Like you can imagine, like kids imagine things all the time. Like
Yeah.
the stories my son will tell me about, like he'll have a dream and then he'll like take the dream and expand it and be like, this is what I dreamed about. I'm like, there's no way you dreamed in that much detail for that long, but it's a cool story. And I think that's imagining, not daydreaming, right? Um, but we might call it daydreaming. And that's where I think it gets kind of confusing. But anyway, the whole point of all of this, and I'm getting off topic, the whole point of all of this is that when we are talking about imagining, we're talking about like creative thought processes and thinking about a world that is different than the world you're currently in, and not avoiding your own feelings, or not avoiding your own life, or not like just staring out the window and daydreaming about what else you could be doing. That's not
Right.
quite the same as imagining. That's like the entire point of it. But I found it interesting. There's like I don't know, there is a large body of information out there about the difference between daydreaming and imagining, and I had never even thought about the difference before.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see a difference of like if I'm reading a book and I'm sort of daydreaming, just kind of like putting myself in the book, like as an escapism versus like using examples in the book to imagine a different world for myself.
Right.
Right? Like sometimes you fall into a book just to escape what's happening in your life, but you're
Mhm.
not imagining a different life for yourself. You're just like, I am removing myself from where I currently am because
Yeah.
I need to be somewhere else.
Yeah, it's like the true definition of escapism, right?
Yeah. But sometimes you read a book and you see yourself in one of the characters and you're like, "Oh, well if she can do that or
Yeah.
I'm similar to her or oh, I could be doing that." Like and you start taking pieces of that and instead of escaping in the book, you're starting to bring pieces of that and you're still kind of daydreaming, but now it's more imagining and you're not totally escaping your life, but you're um, weaving them into each other.
Yeah.
And we all know that I struggle with like, did I have a conversation with a friend or was I just reading a book that happened to have a person that I was talking to in it? Like, who
Right.
knows?
Right. Um,
But that is really interesting.
yeah, I found it fascinating, which is why I wanted to bring it up. I don't know that it matters ultimately, which no offense to the people who spent a lot of time studying this.
Yeah.
Like it's about the precision of words, right? Um, I think we know when we're talking about imagining, we're not talking about escaping our current scenario in life. We're talking about imagining a different scenario. That doesn't mean that we don't want to be where we are, or we do what it like, it's irrelevant how you feel about your current predicament. We need to take a little break. So why don't we do that? And when we come back, let's talk about what the oh my God, my brain just stopped working. Let's talk about um how people feel after they imagine their future. So we'll be right back after this break. Well, hello there, ladies. Are you ready to elevate your life and connect with like-minded souls? Join us every week at the Go Boldly Together weekly Women's Circle, where strength meets sisterhood. Dive into empowering discussions, share your victories, and navigate challenges together. Our circle is a safe space for growth and inspiration. Experience the power of collective wisdom and unleash your full potential. Don't miss out on the transformative energy. Click the link in our show notes or visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/women's weekly group to learn more about our Go Boldly Circle today. Together, let's embrace the journey of personal development and let's celebrate that unstoppable force within each of us. Okay, welcome back. Before the break, my brain stopped working, but also we were gonna start talking about this study that I was reading about, wherein they researched people's well-being as it links to imagination and creativity. And so what this study found is out of this is a small study, but it's interesting regardless. Out of 153 adult participants, those with higher well-being were able to more vividly describe what it would be like to achieve their goals. Those who imagined more positive future scenarios were likelier to report higher well-being 2 months later, whereas those who struggled to imagine a bright future were likely to remain depressed. So the whole point of this, of course, is there is a definite connection between your well-being and your happiness and your ability to imagine achieving whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in life. And I want to like also get into the idea of how people use imagining to like get better at sports and to get better at public speaking and to get better at different things. Like imagining, when you learn how to public speak in like a traditional sense, you're often told to envision yourself up on the stage giving the speech and getting applause by the end, right? Or if you're in sports, like at any kind of higher level, you envision yourself going through all the motions and making the shot and scoring the goal, and you literally picture the whole process in your mind and you keep doing it over and over again until it actually happens.
Well, I'm laughing. I have something important to say to what you just said, and then I'm laughing at. So last night I participated in my first softball game, first official softball game, probably since I was in seventh grade or something, and as I was getting ready to go to it, and despite the fact knowing that it was coming at some point in my future, I have not practiced a lick of softball, and I realized also I've not thrown a softball. I was resting on my laurels of playing catch with my boys playing baseball, forgetting the fact that a softball is a much larger ball. It is also, I play football with them all the time. Totally different shaped ball. So
different way of throwing.
Different way of throwing. I'm quite good at throwing a baseball. I'm quite good at throwing a football. I cannot throw a softball. It is a totally different ball. So fortunately, as I was warming up yesterday, I was warming up with someone who happens to be a varsity coach of a high school team. And I was like, I cannot throw this. And she's like, okay, well, you have to hold it this way. Like I was not even holding it correctly. But I digress. So my son is like, he knew what field we were going to. And he was like, you're going to hit a home run, 260, feet out there. And I was like, I am not. I will be very excited if I make contact. Like I have not practiced. I go to your baseball games. I go to your hitting practices. I do none of those things myself. And he's like, you're gonna hit a home run. I was like, honey, I am not gonna do that. He's like, if you're not confident, you're not gonna do it. And I was like, yes, that is true, but you also need to practice with that confidence. But I appreciated that, like, he hears what I say. Like, my 8-year-old is like, you got to bring the confidence, mom.
Right. You
like,
got to envision it being the way you want it to be. Come on.
Yeah. Because I was just like, yes, but you also have to practice. Like, there has to be. I did make contact both at bats. So
nice.
I grounded out, I struck out, but contact was made in both at bats.
All right.
So I was very happy with that. But the other part going back is, so 5 years ago, had you told me that study, I might have been like, yeah, totally. Like, you need to be able to imagine the future. You need to be able to imagine, like, yes, definitely. And I would have probably have thought, like, write down where you want to be in 5 years, blah, blah, blah. But because of stuff that you and I have done, whether it's in our circle, whether it's in groups that you and I have been part of, or meditations we have done, I was like immediately locked in on, like, I can tell you my ideal day in
Right.
10 years when I've hit all my goals.
Right.
Like, I know what my living room looks like. I know what I'm wearing. I know the breakfast I'm eating. Like, I know how much work I'm doing because I'm still working, because you and I love what we do. And
Yeah.
like, no matter how many goals we hit, we are working. It will be different because we will not be in charge of our own social media. Like, there will be things that we will be outsourcing.
Yeah.
But like, I know, like, I mean, I know what clothing I'm wearing to bed. Like, I know, like, I know how my sheets feel. Like, I have gotten so specific. And now I'm like, oh, I need to go back and find those meditations again. Um, but I have done those meditations, and which, by the way, as a shout out to meditations, if you're like, I can't sit there and not do anything, like, there are some phenomenal meditations where it has you being so specific, where your brain is super active,
Yeah.
and it's super active in a way that you don't feel like I need to shut my brain down. It's just turning it on into something else. Um, but and then talking to Lisa Lisser, who was on the podcast a couple seasons ago as a divorce coach, but I think we may have talked with her about this, or she and I have had separate conversations where she talked about having to write like 100 things, or what she wanted to do by the time she was 100, but like 100 things she wanted to do by the time she was 100. And, she's already in her, I don't know, 50s, maybe
Hmm.
60s. I have no idea how old she is. But, so she doesn't have 100 years or anything. Like, so she had to get really, really specific. And when you have to get very granular, it really makes you focus, and it makes you have to use your imagination. Like, it has to like use all of your brain when you have to be specific, because you can't just use like the traditional goal setting part of your brain, um, because you're not going to come up with enough detail.
Yeah,
Like, you're just not
absolutely.
going to come up with enough.
That's why I say, like, when you're an athlete and you use this kind of tool, so to speak, you're envisioning like start to finish. And by start, I mean like
Yeah.
in the locker room start. And you're like working your way out from the locker room and onto the field. Obviously, I played soccer, so that's
Yeah.
the vision I have. But like if you're a basketball player or you're a baseball player, you're doing all of these things, you're envisioning yourself every step of the way, like you said, in that sort of granular detail, because that's how you get your body and your mind connected so that you're achieving the thing you want to be achieving. And I think that applies outside of sports. I think that apply I can't believe I'm the one using a sports analogy. I think it applies like in, you know, everyday life. If you like you're describing, Tova, if you're trying to get to a certain place, and I don't mean geographic place, but like a, I don't know, level of success or
Yeah.
happiness or whatever in your life, then you are best served by envisioning each step along the way. You obviously need to be flexible, like things happen. You're on the soccer field, somebody like slide tackles you and it goes a different direction and you have to change your plan, but you're still envisioning the success, the successful outcome, whatever that is going to be, and the steps you take along the way to get there.
Well, that's why I don't know what the alternative would be, but that's why it's like, when you're envisioning your future, you don't just envision like, I want to picture myself at the all-star game. You say, what does an all-star player do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm picturing myself as an all-star player. So you don't picture yourself just at the all-star game getting that. Yeah, yeah, you picture yourself there. You picture yourself maybe, winning the crystal slugger bat award, getting your MVP for the all-star game. But you picture like, what what does the all-star MVP do? Right. And then because then what they do is when they strike out, they go back and they watch tape. And when they strike out, they go back and with their hitting coach. They get up in the morning and they go for a run. They eat a healthy breakfast. Like you picture what an all-star MVP does, and they do all of these things throughout their life and throughout their day. And it's not just that one moment. So like in Abby Wambach's book, which we read when you're listening to this 2 months earlier, this is why my brain breaks. But like when you read that book and she talks about like it's not if you fail, but when you fail. And like all-star MVPs fail. People who at the highest level of success, they fail. And so you if you are only planning to picture yourself at the top and just like you picture that being that moment of success, you don't picture all the other failures and how you're going to rebound from them. But if you bring imagination to the game, then you can picture all of the times that they got knocked down. And then now I'm going to get back up again. And now Chumbawamba's in my head. And it's a whole mess here.
Oh, it's better than Mambo number 5. It's fine.
And that's in my head.
You're welcome. So why imagine, right? Like, why are we talking about this? It probably self-evident, but I feel like if you are stuck in a space where you're not imagining anything, like you're not using your imagination, you're not like thinking imaginatively, it can be kind of sad and lonely and stagnant, right? And none of those things are feel good words. Like the I don't want to be in those places. I
Yeah.
suspect nobody listening wants to be in those places. And so one, that could be a red flag for you. I think throughout our seasons we try to flag for you indicators that maybe you're depressed or maybe you have anxiety or maybe you have something going on where you really would benefit from seeking out professional guidance in some capacity. So that I'm flagging for everyone that that might be the case, but also like you can practice imagining. You can, it's a muscle you can work, right? Like you can make it stronger. You can work on it so that it becomes a part of your daily life. How can you do that? Well, we've talked about several, not choking on your drinks. That's how. We've talked about several ways that you can practice imagining. One of those is, of course, like meditation. Guided meditation is fantastic for using your imagination. You can do different visualizations. If you ever did some of those, I can't think what they're called now, but like the word association things where you like say a word and then what's the next word that like you usually do it with other people, but you go back and forth and say words that like, you know, that trigger other words for other people,
Yeah.
and you go back and forth and it's just like it's fun and it practices your imagination. You can do creative writing, you can do art, you can do any of those things to sort of trigger that imagination button in your brain so that you're feeling more creative. Even like coloring, like adult coloring books can stimulate your imagination without you realizing it, right? Like it's just something different and a different part of your brain that gets turned on when you do things like that. You can, like we were saying, you can incorporate imaginative thinking into your daily routines. Imagine your day when you wake up in the morning. If you want to have a great day, imagine every single thing you're going to do that day and how it's going to lead to how you're going to feel at the end of the day, right? Like you can envision that while you're having your cup of coffee or tea in the morning.
Yeah.
You can get out in nature, you can go to the beach, you can do energy work, you can listen to or you can go to like a salt cave or singing bowls. Like there's so many different things that you can do that can stimulate that urge in you, because I don't know anyone who can't use their imagination. I know people who choose not to,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean they can't. That's a choice.
And I know that maybe this is stimulating daydreaming and not imagination, but also reading fiction books and watching fantasy and like encourage just like getting like I always picture just I don't know if any of this is accurate, but like those little parts of your brain to light up. Like just getting that part of your brain, or I mean, not to circle back to Oppenheimer because I don't really love the, that type of imagination, but like if it's, a beautiful mind, or like if math is your thing or science is your thing, like watching a documentary on something really exciting, but that's outside, like anything that's like outside of the box thinking,
Yeah.
even if it's something that somebody else is doing, can be kind of a way to kind of give your brain a little permission to be like, huh, that was interesting. I wonder what would happen if I would like mosey on over here to some outside of the box thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take one more quick break. So why
Yep.
don't we do that? When we come back, we can talk about a few of the things that using your imagination does for you that we haven't talked about yet. And then I did want to just talk about imagining like throughout your lifespan and what that looks like. So let's take a quick break and we will be right back, everyone.
Hey there, Pod Family. Have you ever wished you could stay in the loop with a little slice of transformation and inspiration delivered straight to your inbox? Well, you're in luck because now you can. Introducing our fantastic newsletter, your VIP pass to all things exciting and informative. Join our community of growth minded souls. Get the hottest topics delivered right to your inbox. It's quick, easy, and totally free. Just head over to our website at goboldlyinitiative.com and sign up for our newsletter today. Don't miss out on the next big thing. Stay connected with us. Subscribe now and get ready for some big, bold love.
Okay, welcome back to the show. So before the break, I was saying that we should talk a little bit about what using your imagination or the word imagine can do for you. And we've talked about most of this, but it can reduce your stress. It can improve your mental and physical well-being. You can help to heal your own emotional discomfort. And move forward in your life. There are different and we're going to get to this at some point in the next season, but there are different trauma-based therapies that can actually use guided imagery to help you release that trauma from your body and your being, and not forget, because that's not a thing, but like move forward. You can develop greater confidence. You can you can improve your sports and exercise performance. It also apparently, and I find this surprising but wonderful, you can improve your personal effectiveness and concentration, productivity, and happiness. That's pretty great. If you use your imagination more, you will be more productive, right? Like that seems counterintuitive because we attribute imagination to daydreaming, and daydreaming is often like considered a negative, but
Right.
maybe it's not.
Um, I know, I don't think you said this, but also physical pain it
Yeah.
can help with. Um, I think there's a whole world of research around labor, when a woman is going through labor, that it can help with, but also other physical, like if you can use your imagination to put you in somewhere else, take you somewhere else, just using your imagination to picture something else, or just really do a variety of things, depending on how strong your imagination is. It can
Yeah.
um, help you handle your physical pain as well.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this on the show, and it might not have happened for a long time, but like I used hypnobirthing in both of my labors, and it didn't work as well for the second one. But the first one, my mom is a meditation coach, leader, person. I never know what to call somebody who leads meditation, but um anyway, she did it with me, and she meditated me right out of my body. I mean, I was like up above myself looking down at my body going, "Oh, that's interesting." I was totally dissociated from the pain that was happening, and that was a good thing for the time because I needed to be. So, and I'm certainly not the only one who's had that experience before. Like that's not unique
Yeah.
to um
Yeah.
So it can take away, you can like remove yourself from pain, not always and not forever, but at least for like a breather. You can you can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And this one I found interesting, like um, the role of imagination in maintaining cognitive health and joy in older women. I know that, I mean, I always knew, mainly because my grandmother read articles about it and did an insane number of like word searches and watching game show channels, that like there were certain things that like could help your cognitive health, but I never thought about creativity helping your cognitive health. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's talk about this a little bit because
yeah.
part of what I researched was like imagination across the stages of life, right? So you have childhood, adulthood, and then sort of like aging adults, right?
Hmm.
And what I found, the things that I flagged in this outline are the things that seemed most important to me. And the first was that like in childhood, we spend so much time at school. And at least for us, now it's a little better, but for us, school was not like a place for imagination. It was a place for like memorization and spitting out whatever it is that you've memorized back at the teacher. Not, I mean, there were some teachers, of course, like I hate having to do this. Not all teachers, not all moments, all that stuff.
Right, right,
But by and large, like that was the way education was geared when we were growing up, right? It was memorization and test and then move on. And you're not like having real deep philosophical discussions about the meaning of math, right? Like it was, this is the answer and this is not the answer. Whereas now they're like, I can't even help my kids with their math homework anymore because I'm like, I don't understand how I know what the answer is. I don't know how you're getting there. Um, which I think is great because then it's more imaginative and creative thinking, right? Which is necessary for being successful in life. But also in childhood, we have some genderization of imagination. I don't know if that's a word.
hmm,
I think I might have just made that up. But like, if possible, if you're a parent and you're listening, you probably align with our values pretty closely. Otherwise, you wouldn't listen to us. But also, like, try not to put your kids in gender roles. Like, let them imagine in different ways. If they're boys, let them imagine playing house. Let them imagine with their dolls or figurines or whatever.
right.
If they're girls, let them imagine, being in the Major League Baseball teams. I don't know. Like, just don't genderize imagination. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, and it's not, I think any limitation on imagination limits imagination, right? Like, so you may think you're limiting imagination just in one way. And I think I picture it limiting it every way. Like you're thinking, well, I'm just telling my child that that's for boys and they're a girl, but you're telling them they can't be something they want to be.
Right.
So they're hearing, I can't be something I want to be. And so they're going to shut down other things that maybe they want to be. Um, and so I think um, anytime you can tell not just your kids, but your own brain, yes, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. The more you limit yourself, the harder life gets, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and then so then we have adulthood where we're balancing, right? Like sometimes we have to be that sort of um I want to say straight and narrow, but like that, like we're in the box, we got to get this done. You've got to pay your bills, right? Like you've got to do
Yeah.
your job or do your work, whatever you do. Um, and then there's also room though for imaginative pursuits. Like there is room to use your imagination, whether it's in your job or at home or, in your friend group or just by yourself, like we've been talking about, there is space for it. You just have to find it and make time for that to be
Well,
in.
and like we've talked about, like imagination and using your imagination, it's not all about just like creative pursuits. It's about being creative with whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
And that can be doing something that is not traditionally considered imaginative, like accounting. Not
Yeah,
that you should
but
be
like
creative, like with your taxes, but like,
you,
you know, other things.
but you might have to get creative in terms of like, okay, you have these three businesses. There's like 16 different options of how you can do it.
Right.
And so that requires some flexible thinking, right? Like you can't be stuck in a line and come up with ideas that will solve problems. And everywhere you go, you have to solve like we're always solving problems.
Yeah.
They may not be like extreme problems. They might just be like, I don't know, do I do A or do I do B? Let's figure it out, right? Like you still have to think creatively in order to come up with the solution that's going to work best for you. Um,
Yeah.
and then as
And
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and as you mentioned before, when we're talking about like aging adults and I think all adults or all people really, creativity helps us stay both happier and more what's how do we say it? How, like keeps our cognitive function in a healthier place, right? Because the
Yeah.
more creative you are, the more you're using those different parts of your brain. And as you said before, Tova, like who knows what areas, well, scientists know, but I don't, what areas of your brain are lighting up when you're using your imagination. But it's important to light those parts of your brain up, to keep them working, to keep them, keep the neurons firing and all of those like synapses connected, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like common sense, but like, I don't know that we talk about it all that much. I mean, maybe we will, Tova, as we get older, but like, even when I'm doing like a Sudoku or a crossword puzzle, I'm like, oh, this is good for my brain. I'm going to keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
Do your
Yeah.
Wordle or whatever.
Yeah.
It's requiring your brain to work in a way that maybe it wouldn't during the day otherwise.
Yeah. And like I said, it has always been top of mind for me because once again, my grandmother read an article at some point and she watched a lot of game shows and did a lot of those things because she wanted to stay as healthy. And we had dementia in our family, or at least her mother. And so it was a priority for her.
Yeah.
Um, and so um, I also think, this all these words, even though we've taken a serious conversation to every word that we picked to be joyful, but all these words was words that we thought have an association with joy, right? And the fact is that using your imagination to bring more creativity to your life brings more joy to your life. Like, yeah, it does all these other great things. It's going to light up your brain, but it just is going to bring more joy, whether you're reading a different type of book or whether you're thinking about something differently. And what I love is even just daydreaming, I suppose, um, or imagining about a positive scenario brings you more joy. Like not even having the scenario actually happen, but imagining a positive situation. I think so often we spend our time imagining negative situations happening.
Yeah.
And there's benefits to that, right? We've talked about them. But once again, this goes back to this idea that apparently in my head, I've decided that imagining is like the opposite of anxiety. And like we have the ability to imagine positive things happening.
Yeah.
And even if something negative happens, like we have already boosted our ability to handle the negative thing because we are more resilient when we are in a more positive state.
Yeah. No, all of that is true. All of that. Absolutely. And I think it's important for everyone to find the things that are creative for them, that are imaginative for them. Like it's not going to be the same for each person, and that's fine. Like we talk about this so often, and I feel like I feel like it's an issue for a lot of people. Is that is that, you don't have to be the same as everyone. It's okay to be uniquely you, whatever that looks like. And that's gonna, determine, do you find it creative or do you use your imagination when you're doing a coloring book? Do you use your
Yeah.
imagination by like daydreaming out in a nature walk? I don't know. Whatever you do is fine for you. And that sort of brings us to our homework. So I will wrap us up with this. I would love for you all to think about the last time you made time to imagine anything, whether it's what your future is going to look like, whether it's a new recipe you want to try, if you have a presentation to give at the office, imagining like everything from researching what you're going to talk about all the way through to actually talking about it. Have you made time for any of that recently? So if the answer is no, like if it's been a really long time and you're just like, I'm just getting through a day. Try to sit down and bullet point or brainstorm or whatever you want to call it, a list of things that you would like to imagine. Give yourself free rein, right? Like it could be anything. It could be like going on a hot air balloon ride. It could be traveling to Europe. It could be making Thai food. I don't know. Whatever you want to imagine. And then pick something to try, right? Like pick something to imagine. And within the next week, give it a shot. Like, I don't know, give yourself 5 minutes and just sit there and imagine all the way through it. And then what I would love, because I think this helps us remember to do it more, what I would love is for you to then, you don't need to tell us what you did. What I would love for you to do is write down how it made you feel, right? How did it make you feel to imagine going on the hot air balloon ride, to get up early, to drive out to the field, to like watch them put up the balloon. I don't really know all the steps, so I can imagine it, but I don't know exactly what they do. To what it would feel like to be like up in the air in the hot air balloon taking the ride, right? Like what does it feel like after you have that whole thought process in your brain? And write that down and any feelings you have about it. And then once you've done all that, have a look, like read it all over and be like, oh wow, I'm guessing that you're going to feel really good that you've done all those things, that you're going to have positive feelings about that. If you don't, well, maybe imagine something else next time. But I bet you will. And that will help trigger you to do it again, right? Like, oh, that felt good. I'm going to do that again. And then of course, tag us on social media at Go Boldly Together and let us know, what your feelings are about imagination and using it and how it feels for you on a daily basis. So I think that's it, Tova, unless you have something else you want to add.
No, that's no existential crisis with imagination. I like it.
Excellent.
I'm all for
Excellent.
it.
All right. Well, we will be back next week, everyone, with another and final word that brings us joy. Until then, everyone, happy imagining.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.